What's up, friends? What's really important in life? I mean, really, at the end of the day, what is the most important thing? I have searched high and low for the answer to this question, let me tell you. Whether it was pleasure, whether it was wisdom, whether it was knowledge, and in all my findings, some of the best answers that I have found to this question is found at the very depth of despair, some of the greatest suffering imaginable. And with that, that's an introduction to my top 5 books of all time. There's no coincidence that 3 of those top 5 books are written by Holocaust survivors, because I think so often calamity really has a tendency to clarify, and when things are going good and everything's cool, our perspectives can kind of get skewed, as to what's really important. And I'm really anxious to share this with you, because first and foremost, a couple of you guys reached out to me about finishing the Happiest Man on Earth by Jaku. That blessed me more than you have any idea, because I make these videos with really no expectation. I just do it to share things that have really blessed me in my own life, and without expectation of anybody reciprocating, like somebody actually watching and responding and actually doing the same thing, doing the things that have blessed me so much. So it's so cool for me to hear that you guys have both read Jaku's book, The Happiest Man on Earth, and actually enjoyed it. So that was awesome. So thank you so much for the messages, the comments, and for just reaching out to let me know that you actually did read that book. That makes everything I do worth it so much. So with that said, today Jaku actually passed away. At 101 years old, the author of this amazing book, The Happiest Man on Earth, Holocaust survivor, Jaku, he lived a beautiful and fulfilled life, and I just absolutely love this man. I'll shoot up a graphic behind me, but so oftentimes we think we're disqualified from being happy and having a great life. Some crappy stuff happens to us, some bad stuff happens to us. People are dishonest, deceitful, they take advantage of us, they walk out on us. And I tell you what, it doesn't get any worse than the Holocaust camps of Auschwitz and others, like we're going to get into. And the pearls of wisdom that they come out with, I think, are worth their weight in gold. I think that all of humanity owes it to these precious souls to read what they learned experiencing the depths of depravity of the human race. And so that's why I'm really excited to share these with you guys. So number 5 on the list, The Happiest Man on Earth, Jaku. I made a whole video about it. I won't reiterate, but he just passed away today. I just read that this morning. Such a beautiful man, a beautiful life. And did you catch that the name of the book is The Happiest Man on Earth? And it's written by an Auschwitz survivor. You guys, just because we go through crap doesn't mean that we can't live full and abundant and happy lives. All right? And you don't have to take my word for it. I've lived a fairly sheltered and privileged life myself. I've never been in a concentration camp. But let's just focus on the people that have. And this book, The Happiest Man on Earth, I can't recommend it more highly. We're talking about my 5 favorite books of all time. The number 4 on my list is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He was a psychologist. He was involved in psychotherapy, psychiatry before Hitler invaded the Europe, and so he was bound and handcuffed and sent to concentration camps. Several, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I've read this book, but it's still in my top 5. It changed my life. And so he's a student of human minds, thinking, the reason for it all, big picture ideas. And his takeaways from his time in the concentration camp are phenomenal. They're just I believe every single high school student should read this book, Man's Search for Meaning. It was an absolute classic. In fact, it was recommended to me my senior year of high school, and I was getting involved in drugs and partying and all sorts of stuff I shouldn't have been involved in. And so I just shrugged it off, and I paid no mind to it. I didn't read it until I was probably 30 years old or 28 years old, and I wish I would have read it sooner, because it really, suffering and absolute degradation have a tendency to boil down what's really important in life and just burn away all the stuff that's not. So number 4 on my list is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Incredible book by a psychologist who ends up in a concentration camp during World War II and lives to write about it. Incredible book. So insightful. Number 3 is a little bit of a cheating. It's actually 2 books in one. Incidentally, also written by a Holocaust survivor. This woman is one of my all-time heroes. Her name is Dr. Edith Eger, and she is a hero of mine. She's an absolutely incredible, indomitable, resilient woman who will show you that no matter what you have gone through, it is possible to rise above it, learn, grow stronger, become better, and do better after the fact. You don't have to be a victim of your past. Her first book I read, I actually listened to, was an audiobook called The Choice. And this is the first part of this number 3 sequence of my top 5 books of all time. I've read close to 700 books. This book, I can't tell you how many times it brought tears to my eyes. She was 16 years old, if I'm not mistaken, when she was incarcerated in a concentration camp. In fact, she was a professional dancer, gymnast even, and she was qualified to go to the Olympics representing Germany until Hitler came to power and ruled that Jews cannot do such a thing. That's a huge slap in the face. Think about being so good at something, preparing your whole life, and all of a sudden at the last moment being told, because of your ethnicity, because of your skin color, because of the language you speak, because of the background you were raised in, you can't do that anymore. Just detrimental. But that was just the start of her difficulties in life. She was only 16. All of her family were killed within moments of arriving at the death camps. I mean, her mother and her father, her parents, her beloved parents, up in smoke immediately when she arrived at the death camp. She was separated into 2 lines. How's that for starters? And that's just beginning. And she's just such a beautiful human being that writes about everything she learned, not only through the death camps, but also after finishing and becoming free afterwards, and then becoming a student of Viktor Frankl. And she became a psychologist and a psychotherapist, and she ended up treating America's Special Forces operators in dealing with trauma, because I don't think there's anything more traumatic than going through a Nazi death camp. And so she was able to not only survive the ordeal, but find a way to thrive after the fact. And so her first book is called The Choice. I recommend you read them in order. The Choice by Edith Eger. I recommend every human on earth read this book. I wish, man, one day if I ever become a trillionaire or billionaire, even a millionaire, I want to get this book and all these books in the hands of every single person on earth, because I tell you what, they'll change your life. Her second book just came out very recent. It's called The Gift, 12 Lessons to Save Your Life by Edith Eger. And they are dealing with all of the stuff that we as human beings all deal with. Trauma, regret, wishing we could have done something different, regret, having to deal with making mistakes, having to deal with the stuff that's happened to us. An absolutely incredible book. Oprah gives a recommendation at the top of the cover, and she says, I will be forever changed by Edith Eger's story. I can tell you that I was as well. She is one of my heroes. She's a beautiful human being. She's still alive, thriving in the face of absolutely horrific odds. It wasn't easy. It was not easy. It took her decades to recover from the PTSD and the trauma that she experienced in these Nazi death camps. But she did recover, she did survive, and she learned to thrive. And she teaches you how you can do the same in The Gift by Edith Eger. Number 2. I just finished this book this year. 1.5 months ago, I think. It is, talk about where the rubber meets the road. Death and eternity. It is a scholastic academic review study of 100 near-death experiences. And so I'm fascinated with this aspect of things because I think we all are to a degree, because we all know we're gonna die. We've had friends and family and people or even pets that are close to us that have died. They were here one moment and they're not the next. And it's freaking hard to deal with that, isn't it? You know? And it's so funny how easy it is to sink into this complacency in life, just kind of pushing it off down the road. Yeah, it'll happen someday. And we just push it out of our minds until something happens, either to somebody that's close to us or somebody that's in our proximity. Death is going to happen to 10 out of 10 of us. I mean, I'll never forget when my best friend died. He was in the peak shape of his life, just optimal physical health, just gone. And I tell you what, my friend, we're not promised tomorrow. And so deep in the pit of our souls is this question: what happens when we die? So number 2 on my list of my top 5 books of all time that I've read, and I love to read. This brought tears to my eyes so many times more than I possibly want to get into detail here. Imagine Heaven by John Burke. I did another video on this book because of how powerfully it impacted me. My life will literally never be the same from reading this book. In fact, all these books, that's why they made my top 5 list, is that my life was changed by these books. So just as a microcosm, as like a cross section of what this book offers, I didn't know that blind people don't think in pictures. I mean, it makes sense now that I know that now and looking back and stuff, but I just assumed that they could still imagine things in their mind and they still had an idea of, they created their own concept of what the world looks like in their imagination, but that's not true. In fact, when somebody is blind, they don't think at all. They only have what they hear and what they feel and what they perceive, and that makes total sense. It's just something I didn't know. You don't know if you don't know, right? And one of the most compelling instances from this book were when several blind people from birth, it's not like they had an idea of the world around them, then lost their sight, then had these experiences. No, they never had their sight. They never had any concept of what the world looks like whatsoever. They lived in darkness. They could see things, or they could hear things, they could perceive things, they could feel things, but they could not see things. And when these people had these near-death experiences, several of them in this study of 100, they left their bodies. All these experiences are almost universally the same. Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, Christians, atheists, agnostics, everyone. Almost identical with little bits of nuances. These blind people who have never had an image burned into their brain, never saw anything of what this world looks like, have these near-death experiences. They leave their body. They experience what the Bible refers to as heaven in all of its glory. And they come back, some having no experience of the Bible whatsoever. They were not raised in faith, in a faith upbringing whatsoever, and yet they had these incredible encounters. They come back into their bodies. They are revived, and they tell their families and their friends and their doctors all about what they saw. And you know what it ends up being? A verbatim description of the heaven of the Bible. Not just one person, not just 2 people, not just 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 100 different people in this book are chronicled. Not all of them are blind, of course, just 2 or 3 of them are, if I'm not mistaken. And what they all experience is synonymous. It's the same. And it's the biblical heaven. It's the heaven that's described in the Bible. And I tell you what, I'm a Christian now. I wasn't always a Christian, and I had an encounter where when I was 21, Jesus walked me through my entire life. It's almost like you hear these things that are called near-death experiences where your whole life flashes before your eyes. Well, I had that happen to me when I was 21 years old. My whole life flashed before my eyes. Literally from when I was 6 years old, from the first time I sinned, it's a long story, it's for another day, all the way up until just prior to that dream. And I saw my whole life flash before my eyes. And I think the statistic was of everybody in this book, I think it's like 72% have what they call a life review. And so when I think of Imagine Heaven and I think of books like this, I think of kind of getting the answers or getting the questions to the test before it's test day. You know, because we're all going to face this thing called death, but to be prepared for it and to kind of get a heads up as to what to expect, I think is just an absolute incredible thing. So Imagine Heaven, literally my second favorite book of all time. It's a long video. I'm gonna wrap it up. My number one favorite book of all time, the Bible, the Holy Bible. This book changed my life. In fact, it started with the book of Proverbs. It was said to have been written by the smartest and wisest man of all time. Well, I was 20 years old when I was told this, and I was reckless and on drugs, and really my life was spinning off the rails. And I asked a former guy that I used to buy drugs from, and I asked him if I could buy some drugs from him, and he said no. And he said, but I got something better. And I said, well, what could be better than drugs? And he said, well, the smartest man who ever lived wrote a book, and you should read it. And at the time I thought I was the smartest man who had ever lived, and I didn't remember writing any books, you know? And so I kid you not, I ended up finding some marijuana. I smoked a lot. I smoked up to 12 times a day back in the day. And I rolled up a big joint, and I sat on my back porch, and I said, okay, smartest man who ever lived, let's see what you got. And I opened up his book. It's called Proverbs. It was written by the man Solomon, who has been reported to be the wisest king who has ever ruled the earth, the wisest man who has ever lived. And I sat with my big blunt, or my big, whatever, rolled up, and I read a couple lines of King Solomon's wisdom, and I'd think about it, and I'd take a puff, and I'd say, huh, that's true. And I'd take another drag, and I'd flip the page, and I'd read a couple more lines, and I'd think about it, and I'd say, huh, that's true too. And I read that whole entire book of Proverbs written by the wisest man who ever lived, and every single proverb, I thought to myself, that's true. That's fascinating. And that was the first day I ever had something in common with the Bible. I was raised Catholic. There's a very delineated separation between the clergy and the laymen. And so we were never really encouraged to read the Bible whatsoever. And so I never really touched the thing at all whatsoever. And frankly, I got confirmed. I went through all the rites, all the, the sacraments, but it never reached here. It just was kind of in this ear and out the other. And so this was the first day when I read through the whole, I think if I'm not mistaken, I read through the entire thing, the book of Proverbs. That was the first day that this book had anything in common with this book. And I tell you what, my friend, I started reading it, and it has single-handedly changed my life. This book, unlike any other, is more future-oriented than it is just wisdom and advice. I don't know if you realize this or not, but archaeologists, scientists, philosophers have yet to prove this book as inaccurate, as fallible, as unable to produce the results that it says it will. And so I don't want to make this too long here, but I will just say that this book, it's big. And there's a lot of different translations. Get one that you can understand. This is the New Living Translation. It's very, very easy to understand. It's in modern English. Even the most difficult to understand English translations of the Bible, it's called the King James, which is the these and thous and whatever, is 97% or above completely accurate to the original manuscripts of all the archaeological digs that they've found. And one of the most significant events of modern history is the Dead Sea Scrolls. When they uncovered in Israel the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found almost the entire book of Isaiah. And that book, verbatim, is exactly the book of Isaiah that we have today. That's just one tiny example. I won't get too deep. Already at 20 minutes. I got to get going here. You got to get going, I'm sure. But I just want to tell you, if this book is true, and it says that it is eternal, that it is written by God himself, that it will tell you how to live in the current time, and it will also prepare you for the time to come. If it is what one of my first teachers told me, Bible, which stands for Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth, this book is the most powerful, most impactful, most significant book you can ever read in your entire life. Let me just tell you that there's a reason that it's the most banned book in the entire world. There is absolutely a reason, because any totalitarian dictator, anybody that's seeking to control people, will feel very threatened, and rightfully so, by this book. So just the Bible, if you're just getting started, you've never read it before, I encourage you to read the book of Proverbs, which is the book of wisdom. The Gospel of John. In the New Testament, the Old Testament's really thick. It's really deep. There's a lot of stuff. There's a very big difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. I'm not going to get into the whole Bible study talk right now, the depths of what really that means. But I will say that once you get into the New Testament, it starts with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Start in the book of John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I tell you what, if you really want to go one step further, make sure you get a Bible that's a red letter edition. That means it'll have all the words of Jesus in red. Gandhi said it perfect. He said, "Your Jesus, I love your Jesus. Your Jesus is a beautiful human being. But these Christians, no thanks." I think that's really where a lot of us are at. I know I was before I had this encounter with Jesus where he showed me he died for my sins. I won't get into that, but I will in another video. If you really want to know what God is like, if you really, really want to know what God is like, don't look at the Christians you know. Don't look at the Christians you've experienced on TV. Look at Jesus. The followers of Islam, if they're really good at following Islam, who are they going to look like? They're going to look like Muhammad. A Buddhist, the followers of Buddhism, if they're really good at following their religion, who are they going to look like? They're going to look like Buddha. Christians, if they're really good at following their religion, their leader, Jesus, they're going to look like him. And unfortunately, oftentimes, that's just far from the case. So if you really want to know what God is like, if you really, really want to know what God's message is to humanity, just read the words that are written in red. Because I tell you what, Jesus is the most beautiful human being that has ever walked the earth. And I don't know one single person who has read the words of Jesus and not fallen in love with him. Christians, whole nother story. Myself included. I screw up so many times, you guys. Gosh, all of us do. We all fall short, you know? But Jesus was a perfect human being, and I encourage you to read about him in the New Testament in the Bible. Last but not least, so that was my number one favorite book. I had to learn how to read and how to look through the Bible. This is just kind of like an extra add-on. It's called Learn the Bible in 24 Hours, written by a cryptologist, a brilliant mathematician, cryptologist in World War II named Chuck Missler, and he was really instrumental in helping me understand the Bible. And my favorite part about it is that he really focuses on the prophetic side of the Bible, the future telling of the Bible. And that really changed my life entirely, because he looks at probability and statistics. And because like I said, the majority of the Bible is future oriented. When these words were written, they were foretelling things to come. And that's the thing that makes the Bible unique among all other books. Like, the Bible is the only book to foretell the future accurately. You know, any other religion, any other book of a spiritual leader is really kind of practice and practical application and teaching for the here and now. The Bible is the only one that teaches you about what is to come, up to and including when you die. And it's just so cool that in Imagine Heaven that so many people had died and experienced what it actually tells you it's all about. But anyway, before this gets too long, it's already way too long. If you've held on this long and you've hung in there with me, thank you so much for watching. It's an honor to have you made the choice to spend this time with me. I sincerely hope that these books are as much a blessing to you as they have been to me, because I tell you what, these books in particular have all changed my life. They have given me such perspective on life, given me hope, given me encouragement, really boiled down life to what is really important and sifted out the stuff that's really not. And at the end of the day, we all want to live life to the best of our ability. These books will help. I hope they're a blessing, and I hope that you get a chance to read them. And if you do, let me know. Let me know what you think of them. And to those that already have, thank you so much. That means so much to me that you would take my recommendation and actually read the book. And then to hear that it actually was a benefit and a blessing to you makes my day so much. So I hope this is a blessing to you. I hope this makes your life better. I really believe reading these books will. And that's all for now. Until the next time. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.